pick and prevail in your fantasy football league with the help of our starting lineup. At host to quarterback the show, we have Nick Giacobbe. Up next, a dual threat in Dynasty and Daily Fantasy, we have Cody Repass. And finally, working the waiver wire, we have Nick Cap. These are your playmakers that will provide you with sleepers, breakouts, and busts to help you achieve fantasy glory. This is the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast.
Welcome everybody to episode 16 of the PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, where we give you our predictions, our picks, in the hopes that we help you prevail in Week 7 and the rest of the 2021 fantasy football season. I am your host, Nick Giacobbe, and with me is Nick Capsalis. Nick, we're getting ready for Week 7. How are things going with that preparation?
Pretty good. I said on last episode, I got a lot of games up in the air. Went 5-1 on the week, my best week on the season. Hoping I can ride the momentum this week, but got a lot of bye weeks coming up, so we'll see how that goes.
I got to talk about this one, Nick. I had a Monday night, not miracle, maybe a Monday night save. I don't know what to call it. I was up 40 points or 38, excuse me. I was up 38. My opponent, Nick Palmer in our league, has Josh Allen and Tyler Bass. I have Dawson Knox. I'm thinking Allen can put up 38. That's fine, but Dawson Knox just needs to put up like 12, so I have a nice safety blanket. Well, we saw how the game went. Dawson Knox didn't really do much. I think he only had 7 points, and luckily that 2-point conversion to Josh kind of saved him, and then he went out with an injury that we'll talk about in a minute. I was up 6 points before that last drive. A touchdown kills me. A field goal probably kills me because that means Josh Allen gets them down the field. Yeah. They get to that 4th and 1. The options are miss the field goal, the touchdown is Singletary or Moss, or the game ends. And the game ended, and I won by 2 points in a league that I was 1-4 in. So now I'm 2-4. I really needed that one. It would have really sucked to lose that one because I really should have won it. So I went 3 for 4 in the week last week. So pretty good for me. If this is your first time listening, thank you so much. We do this show every Tuesday, every Friday, and every Sunday. Our Tuesday and Friday shows are audio and video. The audio versions are on all your podcasting platforms, including but not limited to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Podcasts. If you're on iTunes/Apple, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. The video format is on our YouTube page, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. That's for both the Tuesday and Friday shows. The next time you'll hear from us is this Sunday and every single Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern Time, for our live show on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. We give you live updates on injuries at 11:30 a.m. Eastern Time. We answer all of your questions throughout the entire hour, and we're going to try to do some fun stuff this Sunday, see if we could have some special guests on, depending if the schedules work out. No promises, but again, if you have any fantasy questions, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. For social media, for any questions for the live show, and just to follow us in general, please do that on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at PrimeTimeFFPod, Facebook, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast, and YouTube, PrimeTime Fantasy Podcast. Alrighty, Nick, let's get into some injury updates from week 6. So just so you guys know, we are recording this on Wednesday, October 20th. So we don't have a lot of injury updates going into the weekend as we wish we did if we record on Thursday night, but scheduling conflicts, can't do that. That's why I'm wearing my Knicks shirt. The Knicks open up in about 30 minutes, 40 minutes, so go Knicks. But these are the updates that we can provide for you as of Wednesday, the 20th. Dawson Knox did have hand surgery. I believe it was yesterday he had the hand surgery. I don't think it was today, but it's a broken bone in his hand. It was actually broken before the 2-point conversion. Josh Allen was waving off the play, and Dawson Knox said, nope, we're going to do it. So, so he had hand surgery. There's no timeable yet, but I believe he's out a couple weeks. So, Nick, this is a big blow for you of Dawson Knox. He had kind of proved that he was almost a top 5 fantasy tight end. He was doing pretty well. So he was a guy you're almost locking into your lineup every week. So if Dawson Knox is injured, Nick, who do you go and pick up to kind of fill that void for the next, let's say month? Let's say he's out for a month right now.
Yeah, thankfully when the injury happened was right into the bye week. And if he's only out, what it sounds like is going to be 3-4 weeks.
I'm guessing a month. I'm no medical doctor, but let's assume
even if he's out a month, I'm not too concerned. You should have picked someone up off your waiver wire this week anyway, to fill the void where he was going to have a bye. I'd still hold on to him. I think he's this year's Tunyon. Cody talked about it. Nick talked about it. Like, that's the role he's filled. And he's done a good job. In my opinion, I would not pick. I don't know who their backup is, but I would.
The backup scored a touchdown. That's for sure. The backup scored a touchdown when I needed a touchdown. So
I'm still not picking up the backup though. I think that, in my opinion, Dawson Knox was more the talent versus the role.
Yeah.
Where I think someone like, we'll talk about it more, Ricky Seals-Jones, Logan Thomas really benefited from the role inside of Ron Rivera's offense, where I trusted Seals to take over. Dawson Knox, I trusted a little bit more of the talent, especially in that crowded of an offense. So I'm not really looking to pick up the backup, and I'd hold Dawson Knox if you had him, because by the time he comes back, he still should be a top 10 tight end the rest of the year. So
go pick up Ricky Seals-Jones or Zach Ertz. If either of them are available, those are your two best options on the waiver wire. If they're not, you're hoping for like CJ Uzomah or Dan Arnold, and they score a touchdown. That's kind of what you're working with at the moment. Second piece of news, Kyle Shanahan said that he's quote unquote pretty optimistic that Jimmy Garoppolo can play Sunday versus the Colts. Shanahan also indicated that Trey Lance probably won't be ready until next week. So if Lance is ruled out and Jimmy G is questionable, first off, if Jimmy G is questionable, who's the other quarterback? That's something I need to look up. Second off, if Jimmy G is starting, what 49ers are you starting, Nick? Because I know my answer, and I've said it for the last 6 weeks, and my answer isn't changing.
I would. So going up against the Colts, I'm still starting Debo. Kittle is not going to be active, I assume.
He's not. I think he's out until I think he's out until the Arizona game in like 2 weeks.
Okay, so Kittle's still not an option. I think I'd still hold Ayuk. I wouldn't play him. I'd see if they rework that offense coming out of the bye week and get him more involved. I would start Elijah Mitchell because Indy's not good against the run, but that's it. Nobody else on that team I think is startable. I think, who is the third? Is it Nick Mullins, or did they get rid of him when they brought him?
I am looking at the depth chart. According to ESPN, they do not have a third at the moment.
Oh, they got somebody there. They just probably still have
practice squad. Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm only starting Debo. Debo's matchup proof at this point. I think you're starting him no matter what. Everybody else, not a chance. I don't want to touch any 49ers. I don't want to touch the running backs. I don't want to touch. It's like the cheese touch from like Dariva Wimpy kid. I want no part of any 49er right now from a fantasy perspective. So
just real quick though, real quick on if it is Nick Mullins that takes over. I got my.
I'm still starting Debo.
My favorite stat of all time is the Nick Mullins stat, and it's in your first 16 starts as an NFL quarterback. Nick Mullins has the second most passing yards ever, only to Mahomes. That's absurd. That's just some random stat. Why is
that's a good stat for like sports trivia night at a bar or something that
exactly
nobody's gonna
get. That makes no sense. But he gets production with Shanahan, so it's interesting.
I hate Kyle Shanahan. I hate the 49ers. Anyway. As of Wednesday, the only big injury news when it comes to not practicing that we could report on is Kenny Golladay, Saquon Barkley, and Kadarius Toney all did not practice. They're facing the Panthers this week, I believe. It's a pretty favorable matchup. So, Nick, hypothetically, again, where it's Wednesday night, if they practice Thursday and or Friday, which one of those three are you comfortable playing, if any of them?
So the Giants are going up.
Let's say they only practice Friday. Let's say they get a limited practice on Friday and they're questionable. Which one are you comfortable playing?
With that Panthers matchup, I think I'd feel comfortable playing any of the three if any were to play.
Okay.
I think Toney, I think, has solidified himself as one of the top 3 rookie receivers that have been drafted. I think he looks more talented than Devontae Smith at this point. If he's out there, I think he's a must start most weeks. He is the most talented wide receiver on that team, and he's really only had 2 games where they've actually used them properly. If you own him in Dynasty, you're going to be set for a while. Saquon Barkley, where you drafted him, he's playing, you're playing him. I don't think there's too much question about that. Galladay's the only fringe one, and I kind of like the connection that Danny Dimes and Galladay are starting to get. So I really do like Galladay a lot more than most do. I thought he was going to be a bust on the season, and he was for the first half. But there were a couple of games where if you watched the game and you saw the connection, it was clearly there. And there was something more than just like, a Darius Slayton type connection. Like they built up a quick rapport. And I think that, Galladay, I think, has a 3-4 year contract. It's going to keep getting better from there, especially if they keep Toney production up. I think they got 2 solid wide receivers there.
I'm only starting Saquon. Kadarius Toney's had 1 or 2 good games so far, and I haven't seen enough from him to show that he's solidified as one of these top 2 or 3 wide receivers, especially if Shepard and Galladay and Saquon are all playing. And even who's the other receiver they have? Slayton, if he ends up playing too. Like, I don't know. I haven't seen enough. The wide receiver position is too deep, so I'm not playing Galladay or Kadarius Toney basically no matter what, unless your receiver depth is really depleted. But Saquon, he's locked in every single week that he's on the field. You play him. All right, that's all the news that we have. Not a lot, but it's probably better than having a lot of news. So we're going to go into lock or flop. We're going to tell you if these players should be locked into your lineups for week 7. So for those that watch the video format, we do not have graphics today as we're in a bit of a rush, scheduling conflicts, but that's okay. But we'll tell you which quarterbacks, receivers, running backs, tight ends, etc. you should be locked or maybe not locked into your lineups. For the quarterbacks, Jameis Winston going to Seattle on Monday night. Tua Tagovailoa facing the Atlanta Falcons, and Matt Ryan facing the Miami Dolphins. So, Nick, let's start off with Matt Ryan. Last time we saw him, he faced up against your Jets in London. So, is Matt Ryan a lock or a flop going up against the Dolphins defense?
Absolutely lock him into your lineup. The Dolphins are an absolute mess right now. Brian Flores was hyped up to be a top 5 defensive coach in the league, and he could not stop Urban Meyer in Jacksonville with a bunch of rookies at hand. They're not going to be able to stop this team. Coming off the bye, you got Matt Ryan, Calvin Ridley's coming back, Kyle Pitts is coming back, Russell Gage looks like he's going to be back on the field, Mike Davis is out there, Cordell Patterson is getting healthier. That whole team, they're going to be fully loaded this week. They're going to be locked in after the bye week. You got to trust Matt Ryan this week to go put up some numbers against a team that should feel absolutely deflated after that poor performance.
Yeah, neither of these teams have been good against quarterbacks when it comes to fantasy purposes. So you lock in Matt Ryan this week. There's no doubt about it. The Dolphins have been pretty underwhelming. If you look at teams that have been underwhelming this year from defense, offense, I don't care what perspective it is. The Dolphins have probably been a top 3 underwhelming team. So I'm locking them in. I'm just looking on this list right now, trying to find where they actually were. But I think they were a top 5 worst defense from a fantasy perspective. They just haven't lived up to the standard. So lock in Matt Ryan this week. What about Tua, the quarterback that's going against the Falcons this week? Are you locking in Tua this week on a fringe starter if you have Josh Allen on bye and Russell Wilson's injured or something like that?
No, I'm sorry, I can't do it. In my opinion, I know I'm a Jets fan, but I think Zach Wilson is more talented than Tua is. I think he's got the bigger arm, and Zach Wilson barely had a good enough game to be a top 20 quarterback 2 weeks ago, the last time we saw him play. So I'm not really trusting Tua coming off the injury. Receivers are still dinged up. They really can't get the running game going with Tua at quarterback. I'm really not trusting Tua in this matchup. Even as favorable as it is, I'm sorry. I just don't trust playing him this week. I don't trust playing him any week, so much so that there's trade rumors going on at the moment for him.
I need to see your waiver wire. I'll play Matt Ryan over him. I'll play Derek Carr over him. But after that, I'll play Tua. I'm not saying he's a lock because I don't think he's going to be a top 10, top 12 quarterback. But the Atlanta Falcons have given up the second most fantasy points to quarterbacks. So this is the make it or break it week for Tua, I think. If he doesn't play well this week against the Falcons, I don't think he should be rostered in any fantasy leagues unless you're in like a 14-team league or something like that. But if you're in a 10 or 12-man league, I don't see any situation where where you're playing Tua. So we'll see how he does this week. What about Jameis Winston going up to Seattle to face the Seahawks on Matt Hasselbeck night where he's going into the Ring of Honor?
I'm trusting Jameis Winston this week. Jameis Winston, Monday Night Football. Big Ben didn't deliver, but Big Ben doesn't have the arm Jameis does, or the periodic arm that Jameis does. When Jameis gets going, he's a pretty good force, and I trust him in this matchup against that pitiful secondary. I've advised a couple of my friends that have Russell Wilson injured and some of the other quarterbacks on bye this week. Go start Jameis Winston this week. I have Matt Ryan slightly above him. I think the two of them you could interchange. They'll both have good production, but out of the 3 we just talked about, I'd go Matt Ryan 1, Jameis Winston 2, and 2 or 3.
The Seahawks don't get pressure on quarterbacks. They don't catch the ball when the ball is thrown to them. They let it ding off their helmet. Shout out to Blitz Boy out there. They don't really do anything right on defense. I know they played decent against Big Ben in the second half, and Pete Carroll loved it, but that's Big Ben, like you said. Jameis can move in the pocket. Jameis can throw deep. Big Ben can't do either of those things. So yeah, I think you're locking in Big Ben. Not Big Ben. You're not locking in Big Ben. A, because he's on bye. B, because he shouldn't be on fantasy rosters after he couldn't even play well against the Seattle Seahawks. You're locking in Jameis Winston. He's a lock for me. He's a top 10, top 12 fantasy quarterback this week. And as for Alvin Kamara on the Saints, like, whew, he had 7 touchdowns against the Vikings. I don't think he's having 7 because that's absurd, but Kamara is going to have 200 all-purpose yards against the Seahawks, whether it's rushing, receiving.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I don't know what he's going to do, but like if you have Kamara on Monday night and you're down 40, that number is doable, and it's really doable. Like he's probably going to have 2-3 touchdowns and like 200 all-purpose yards. Kamara's going to have a monster day, and Jameis should have a pretty good one as well. Wide receivers, we have AJ Green going up against the pitiful Houston Texans. We have A.J. Brown going up against the Kansas City Chiefs, and we have Jamar Chase going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Nick, did you look at the matchups this week? There's a lot of really horrible games. Like there's like Cardinals, Texans, the Rams have the Lions, the Bucks have the Bears. In my spread pool, I don't know what to do with half of these games because the spread's like 14.5, but I'm like, I don't think Dan Campbell and the Lions are even going to come close to that spread anyway. So anyway, let's start with AJ Green. AJ Green against the Cardinals, is he a lock or AJ Green against the Texans, is he a lock or a flop?
I got AJ Green locked in 3 or 4 lineups this week. I really like the matchup. He's gotten 6 targets in all but 1 week this season. It's gonna keep the production still gonna be there. This Houston Texans team is horrendous. There is no hope for that team. I'm sorry, unless they really do get a monster deal for Watson, there is no hope for them. That defense is horrendous. AJ Green and this Cardinals team is going to cook them. I'd play all your Cardinals this week. Even though they've been a carnival of who do you start, who don't you start, I'm starting every single one this week. I have no questions asked against this team. And the Cardinals have the best offense in football, as Nick predicted in week 1 or 2. Everybody that you have on that team is playable, and I wouldn't be surprised if you played every single one. There's a good case that you could start the entire Cardinals offense as your fantasy lineup and win your matchup this week because of how favorable it'll be.
It's pretty favorable. Yeah, Kyler's going to be the quarterback 1 by a mile. I spoke about it in the waiver segment. AJ Green's targets, he's had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 6 weeks. He's had 6 targets. That's phenomenal. He has 3 touchdowns already. He's had over 13 fantasy points in 4 out of 6 weeks. He's established himself as the wide receiver 2. The Texans defense is the 6th worst against quarterbacks when it comes to fantasy points. So I'm starting AJ Green. I'm probably starting some of those other receivers too. Like Hopkins should have a monster week too. So start your Cardinals this week. What about AJ Brown against the Kansas City Chiefs?
Oh man, he's gonna have a nice game. He's gonna have a real nice game. AJ Brown owners, be excited. He struggled the first half last week. He was a monster in the second half. He's going to be a monster all game against Kansas City. Their defense is so bad. Don't be shocked because Taylor Heineke wasn't too productive against him. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, all going to be fine in this matchup.
Yeah, I know he's coming back from the injury, A.J. Brown. Last night on Monday night, he had 16 fantasy points. He had almost 100 yards. Didn't have a touchdown, but I think this week he gets in the end zone. I think he's going to have close to 100 yards this week. He looks close to 100%. He has another week to rehab and to get back. And the Chiefs are going to put up points, and Tannehill is going to have to throw a bit. And a huge win for the Titans on Monday night. So I think A.J. Brown's going to have a pretty big week against those Chiefs, because that Chiefs defense is not great at all. All right, how about Jamar Chase? He's been the best rookie wide receiver. He's been a great fantasy wide receiver too. Probably been a top 15 fantasy wide receiver, but he's going up against the Baltimore Ravens. Is he a lock or flop for you?
Jamar Chase has had one of the most wacky seasons, like for an NFL rookie. Like he's had a phenomenal season, and it's translated to the fantasy numbers. But if you look at the stats through the first 4 weeks, it makes no sense with how his target share has been for him to put up numbers like he's doing. And I just don't see that being possible against this Baltimore area. I think Baltimore is, inside that Super Bowl bubble right now. Probably the favorite in the AFC at the moment. After Buffalo took that loss and after Kansas City struggles and the Chargers just got blown out.
I don't care what anybody says. Kansas City to me, until you lose in the playoffs, you're the favorite to me. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care. I don't care what the media is saying. I really don't. Kansas City, Buffalo are my 1 and 2. Until the Chiefs lose in the playoffs, until I see it with my eyes, No, they're the favorites. I need to see it with my eyes.
I agree, but if you want to go off a power ranking how you're playing right now, Baltimore is
I know, but I don't like power rankings. I like
AFC.
Baltimore, but it's like Baltimore's not beating Kansas City in the playoffs. It's not happening. I'll put something on that.
I agree.
Buffalo has the best chance if it's in Buffalo, but yeah, they're not.
I agree, but it's week 7 of the NFL season, and I'm sorry, I'm not putting Jamar Chase against the secondary. I think this is the first real bust week that you'll see from Jamar Chase.
Yeah, so Baltimore is the 3rd best secondary when it comes to fantasy wide receivers. It's tough to gauge how good it actually is, but I mean, I think they held Tyreek Hill to like 10 points or something like that. I don't think that was one of his boom weeks, if I remember correctly. Yeah. It depends on who your wide receivers are, because you're probably starting Chase every week as your wide receiver 3. You have bye weeks now, Stephon Diggs, and I forget who else is on bye this week. There's like 2, the Steelers have Deontay Johnson. I think you just have to play him depending on how deep your receiving core is. Like my receiving core, for example, in one league is Chris Godwin, Robert Woods, OBJ, Justin Jefferson. Hypothetically, if I had Chase, I'm playing him because I have Jefferson out and I can't trust OBJ. Now, my other friend's wide receiver core is Mike Evans, Jamar Chase. Who else does he have? He has... Crap. Let me look it up right now because I said it on the show the other day. And his receiving core is just nuts. I think he has Hollywood Brown, and he has one other one. So he has, I'm going to read it off right now. Hopkins, Cooper Kupp, Mike Evans, Jamar Chase, Hollywood Brown, and
what a loaded receiving core.
And he has Cortland Sutton too. If that was my if that's my receiving core, I'm benching Jamar Chase. I'll put in Cortland Sutton or Hollywood Brown. The Cincy defense has been good, but Hollywood Brown's been good. Yeah, I would play Sutton or Brown at that point and bench Chase. That's not a knock on his talent, but if you have a receiving core like that, take the person with the safer floor at that point. But we'll see what happens. Let's go to running backs. Leonard Fournette, Alex Collins, and Antonio Gibson. Start with Fournette, Nick. Are you starting playoff Thursday night Super Bowl Lenny?
I think you have to. Fournette's been, one of the unsung heroes of the fantasy year. Those Tampa Bay running backs, they've kind of been shit on since the start of the year. And with so much uncertainty, with them bringing in Gio Bernard to be in the James White role, and, Rojo still going to have a role, Fournette just said, screw that. I'm the number 1 running back here, and I'm going to prove it week in, week out. And that's what he's done. You got to start Leonard Fournette. He's been so productive, and you got to trust him. I mean, he's been too productive for you not to trust him as the running back 1 in that backfield by a wide margin. And obviously, Tampa is going to put points on the board every week. He gives you one of the best hopes to find the end zone as a running back, and he's getting the workload too. So, I mean, what more can you ask from for a running back? You probably drafted in the, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round?
I mean, he's had back-to-back 20-plus point fantasy weeks. Tom Brady likes him. Arians likes him. I've spoke about him on the show before. He's a running back too now. You start him every single week. What about Alex Collins going up against the Saints? He's a little banged up, but we're assuming at the moment that he is going to play. I think he had 17 fantasy points last week, something like that. So are you starting Alex Collins this week?
Yeah, I said it last week. Alex Collins, you could tell there's talent there. It's not just, a running back that should be a backup that's in a role. No, Alex Collins is a really good football player. And I have no doubt in my mind that he still will be. I'm not sure. Is Rashad Penny coming back this week?
I think so, but he usually only plays like 3 plays and then his hip or something pops out. So I wouldn't play Rashad Penny. I would never trust playing Rashad Penny.
I understand the concerns with Alex Collins with, the other running back coming back, but I don't have those concerns. I think he's a running back 1 there. I think he's talented. I think they use him the right way. I think he finds production in this game.
The Saints have allowed the fewest points of fantasy running backs. He's a bust for me. He'll probably get the workload. He'll get the volume, but I don't trust Geno. I don't trust that offense. The Saints have been great against the running back, so I don't trust it at all. I'm fading Alex Collins this week. You probably have a better running back available. And if you don't with all these injuries and you have to play him because the position is thin, you got to play him. But as terms of saying, is he a lock or a flop? To me, he's a flop. What about Antonio Gibson going up against the Packers?
That's tough because Gibson's been dealing with this lingering injury. and McKissick has a role in this, much more of a role than he should have in this offense, where you can't trust Gibson to really be the workhorse back. But where you drafted him, I'm assuming where you drafted him, obviously you have one of the healthier running backs that was drafted in that end of the first, second round. You're gonna have to lock him in. You're gonna have to. But I would temper your expectations. Rest of the season.
My expectations are not tempered. The Packers have been terrible against the run. They are the 6th worst defense when it comes to fantasy points. Khalil Herbert had 97 yards and a tutty last week. I think he had 18 fantasy points. Antonio Gibson's going to have a good game this week. As long as he stays on the field, as long as he stays healthy. I know he went out twice last week against the Chiefs, but the Packers aren't good against the run. So I think as long as he's healthy, Antonio Gibson is a top 10 running back play this week.
My only debate with that would be the fact that Herbert owned that backfield because there was no one else to compete with him, where Gibson really is competing with J.D. McKissick. I think Gibson only sees 60% snap share. That's the same ratio that Mike Davis sees to Cordell Patterson.
Yeah, it's true. It's a good point, but
if you could put it in reason, like that's where it is. Then that's not to say you won't find production, because it is a great matchup and he's a phenomenal player. But when you're not seeing the field on 40% of snaps, I can't trust you to finish as an RB1.
All right, and as for tight ends, Hunter Henry, Zach Ertz, and Ricky Seals-Jones. Nick, Hunter Henry against your New York Jets. Is he a lock or a flop?
Let's go, baby. Jets walking into Foxborough and Zach Wilson going to shock the world with 4 more interceptions. Yeah, play Hunter Henry. They're going to get the ball in a good field position, and they're going to be throwing the ball to the tight ends all game. They did it the last time they played. I'm not concerned at all. Play Hunter Henry. Should have a top 12 week.
Jets are giving up the most fantasy points to tight ends. They give it up 194.
And the Jets also had they had a bye week. So
they had a bye week. They had a bye week, and the next closest one is the Bears at 163. So with the bye week, they've given up 30 more points. Play Hunter Henry this week if you need a tight end flyer. If you lost Dawson Knox, he might be on your waiver wire. Play Hunter Henry.
Yep.
What about Zach Ertz in his first game with the Arizona Cardinals? I think he's playing this week. I think I saw a comment by Cliff Kingsbury. Yeah. So, would you play him this week against the Houston Texans?
Absolutely. Such a good matchup. I think he's still going to, you're going to see plays where he's still trying to fit into the offense, but I think he's going to be so good. Max Williams had 2 boom weeks, and Zach Ertz is a much better player than Max Williams is. I trust Zach Ertz. No questions asked. Should have another guy going to be a top 12 tight end, as long as he's out on the field enough, which I think he will be. I don't think there's any concerns about that Texans defense where you're going to be worried about any player that you're playing there.
I think he sees a lot of snaps, especially later in the game if they're trying to work him into the offense and they're up a lot of points. I think he can get you a garbage time touchdown. So, I'm locking in Zach Ertz this week, especially with the tight end injuries to guys like Logan Thomas and Dawson Knox and George Kittle. And then this team's on bye, and it's a thin position, so I would play Zach Ertz this week if you have him on your roster. And lastly, Ricky Seals-Jones. We talked about him in the waiver wire segment the last 2 weeks, I believe, as Logan Thomas's backup. I believe he had 16 fantasy points last week. His targets have been going up. So are you starting him against the Green Bay Packers?
If you need a tight end that, he might still be on the waiver wire if, he wasn't picked up last week. Play him purely because of the matchup and his role within the offense. Like I said, I don't think Ricky Seals is the most talented tight end. I don't think Logan Thomas really is either. But the role that Ron Rivera puts them into allows them to succeed. So whoever was the tight end in Washington would put up fantasy points on a weekly basis. That's the reason I'd play Seals. I just trust the role more than I do some of the other guys where I trust talent more than the player.
Yeah, the role will be there. However, the Green Bay Packers are a bottom 5 defense when it comes – bottom meaning they've given up – they're tough against tight ends when it comes to fantasy points. So – temper those expectations. I don't know how many points he'll score when they're pretty good against tight ends, so we'll see what happens. But I would say he's a flop for that reason. The Packers have been tough against them. I'm going to say he's a flop. I think there could be a better option out there if Hunter Henry or Zach Ertz are on your waiver wire. All right, that was lock or flop. We're now going to go to rapid fire. We're going to do one player from each team from each game and let you know which one we would rather play. So, Giants, Panthers, Sam Darnold, or Daniel Jones?
That's a good one. I'm going Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones has had so much. I know Darnold's run into the end zone a couple times, but without Christian McCaffrey in that backfield, he's been a completely different quarterback and nowhere near the skilled player that he was with McCaffrey and having that safe check down. I like Robbie Anderson a lot this week. I do not like Sam Darnold. I like Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones will move the ball around. There's a lot of question marks at the wide receiver position there, but Daniel Jones has had enough weeks where he's finished as a top 10 quarterback where I trust him, and he's had it with dealing with all these injuries. Sam Darnold dealing with injuries on his team has not had the same performance.
Give me Sam Darnold. He's good in garbage time. He gets sling the ball around. We saw what he did. I think he get another 6-7 points against the Minnesota Vikings last week. Give me Sam Darnold. There's too many injuries on the Giants for me. Michael Carter or Damian Williams or Khalil Herbert, depending on which running back actually plays.
That was meant to be Damian Harris. My apologies.
Damian Harris. Okay, I read that wrong. Show notes. Damian Harris or Michael Carter. I'm going to take Damian Harris. He has a more expanded role. I think the Patriots are up in this one. I think he gets more work. I think Michael Carter's kind of touchdown or bust.
Yeah, both of them are really going to be touchdown or bust. And Damian Harris, he doesn't have, they both have guaranteed roles in the offense as the RB1. And even though Harris is splitting with two other running backs more often than Carter is, all that matters with those two players is who's going to get in the end zone. And Michael Carter does not present the same upside in this game. Zach Wilson's going to turn the ball over a lot. They're going to be managing the clock. That's what New England likes to do. They're going to be in a good position to put Harris in the end zone a couple times.
How about Daryl Williams or Julio Jones?
I'm going to go Daryl Williams. I don't really trust Julio. I don't like what I've seen from him. I don't think he's the same receiver that we saw 2 years ago. I don't see the talent that everybody still thinks that he has. He's still a good player. I'm not going to knock him like that. But if I'm being honest, I think he's a little more AJ Green at the end of his time in Cincinnati than I do think that he's the Julio that he once was. That's more the player that I see right now.
I want to see another game from Daryl Williams because he kind of outplayed Clyde Edwards-Helaire.
Yep.
More goal line looks. He looked better running the ball. And Clyde isn't bad. He also doesn't get a lot of work, Clyde. They don't give him a ton, but Daryl Williams, he's slotted right into that offense. So, yeah, lock him in. They like running the ball. I'm going to take Daryl Williams in this one. Aaron Jones or Scary Terry? I'm taking Scary Terry. He's a target machine. He's going to get in the end zone. The Packers' corners are no bueno without Jair Alexander. Jamar Chase that we talked about, torched them. He should have had 200 yards if that other one wasn't called back. Yeah, let's lock in Terry. He's going to have a big game. Touchdown, 100 yards, book it.
I'm going Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones does exactly what you said, but in the running and the passing game. I think he gets over 100 all-purpose yards. I think he finds the end zone multiple times. Green Bay's going to get up early. They're going to manage the clock. Aaron Rodgers is going to be under pressure with Chase Young coming off the edge. He's going to be checking down to his guy, Aaron Jones, all game. Rather than the Aaron Rodgers show, this is going to be an Aaron Jones show.
What about Jalen Waddle or Cordell Patterson, Dolphins and Falcons?
Just because
Cordell Patterson, right? You have to take Cordell Patterson. You have to take him.
Nope, I'm taking Jalen Waddle. Give me Jalen Waddle.
I'm taking Waddle too. That Falcons secondary is one of the worst in the league. They gave up the second most fantasy points to wide receivers, I believe. Jalen Waddle should have a pretty big game. All right. Ravens and Bengals, Hollywood Brown or T. Higgins?
I'm going Brown. Brown's been such a phenomenal fantasy receiver this year. He went over his sophomore slump last year, and he looks like the player he did in year one. He looks really, really good. Baltimore's moving the ball, no problem. He's the guaranteed wide receiver one on that team. T. Higgins still splitting a lot of role with Jamar Chase, with Tyler Boyd, with Joe Mixon. Hollywood Brown, he's outside of Mark Andrews, is probably the best weapon on the team, especially with all those running back injuries that they have. Brown is going to have such a locked-in, loaded role in this offense every single week, and T. Higgins, every week's going to be a question of which of those three receivers is the number one.
I think that this could be the game of the week. There's a lot of blowout games, and it looks terrible. The slate looks terrible this week, but this is the most intriguing game. The Bengals have played really well this season. I think they're 5-1, 4-2, 4-2 because they lost to the Packers and Matt Nagy somehow. But yeah, the Bears, the Bengals look really good, and they're like nobody's talking about it, but they could be a playoff bubble team. They beat the Steelers once, and the Steelers don't look great. The Ravens look excellent, but the Browns are underperforming. This is a big game for the Bengals. If the Bengals go out here, they don't even need to win this game. They got to keep it close. They keep it close like they did with the Packers. That's a win in my book. It's a moral victory. But with this one, I think they're going to try to double team Chase. So I'm going to take T. Higgins in this one. I think T. Higgins could get a lot of targets in this one. I think he could score a touchdown. Burrow's going to throw the ball a ton. I think he'll have 2 touchdowns, 3 touchdowns, maybe a pick. But I think Burrow will still have a good game. I think Higgins will still have a good game. It's a scary matchup against that Ravens defense, but they give like 30 points to Carson Wentz and the Colts. They gave up like 30 or whatever to the Chiefs. Who do they face this week in the Ravens? Do you remember? I forget who they faced this week. They faced the Chargers. They actually really good.
Yes, they smoked the Chargers. That's right.
Yeah, they smoked the yeah, but I'll take T. Higgins. What about the Rams or Rams and Lions? We know who's winning that one. Tyler Higbee or TJ Hawkinson?
I'm going with Tyler Higbee. I think he gets a multiple touchdown game here. I think this is a Tyler Higbee show. I think for all those guys like me that took Higbee late and we're hoping that he could be a solid player. He's been struggling the past couple weeks, even though he's seen like a 97% snap share. I think this is the game where you see Tyler Higbee go Tyler Higbee mode, get one of those multiple touchdown games like he had last year.
I'm going TJ Hawkinson. He rose from the dead finally last week. He had a couple stinkers, and last week I think he had 16 fantasy points. I think he gets in the end zone this week. The Rams have Jared Goff has to throw it somewhere, and it's a revenge game. Jared Goff, revenge game against the Rams. So I'll take TJ Hawkinson. Eagles and Raiders, Derek Carr, Jalen Hurts. This is a pretty interesting one. I'll take Jalen Hurts. The rushing upside, they've been passing the ball a lot. I hate the Eagles. I think they're a bottom 10 team, but from a fantasy perspective, I will take Jalen Hurts. But I think both of these quarterbacks are playable this week.
Yeah, I picked up Carr off waivers to play him for a Herbert bye week this week, but I think Jalen Hurts, I mean, if you drafted him, Jalen Hurts is executing. I think he's in a top 7 fantasy quarterback this year. It's just because he has so much rushing ability, and they're down in every single game. And I think they keep it a little bit closer in this one. But I mean, the Raiders look good without Gruden, so who's not to say Raiders go blow out the Eagles this week? Hurts is going to have another great week. He's going to look like a top fantasy quarterback again. Not that he's a really good quarterback, but he's good for fantasy with the rushing upside and just so much passing volume because they're down in every game.
Texans and Cardinals, Brandon Cooks, DeAndre Hopkins. I think we're both taking Hopkins in this one, but Cooks is still a play. But I don't know. The Cardinals defense looks good, but I'm taking Hopkins. I think you're
Chandler Jones is going to be back. JJ Watt's coming off the edge. When they got that pressure on, it's going to be so tough for whoever's under center to throw the ball.
Bucks and the Bears, Damian Williams or Khalil Herbert right now. Damian Williams has not been activated off the COVID list as of Wednesday, October 20th. So if not, it's Khalil Herbert or Chris Godwin. I'll take Godwin. The Bears defense isn't great. Brady's going to spread the ball around. I'll take Chris Godwin over one of the running backs because if both of them play, I don't know which one I'm comfortable playing. So I'll take Godwin.
Bears did a phenomenal job last year against the Bucks. I'm not saying they could do it again, but I trust that running game. Damian Williams looked really good 2 weeks ago, and Herbert looked good last week. The new play caller likes to run the ball, and Godwin's such an uncertainty nowadays. I think he's the 3rd best wide receiver in that receiving core. I trust Mike Evans, and I trust Antonio Brown over him.
Nope, Mike Evans is Mr. Inconsistent.
Okay, he's Mr. Inconsistent.
He's more inconsistent than Tyler Lockett. I'll take Godwin.
Mike Evans is a better wide receiver than Chris Godwin. Antonio Brown is a better wide receiver.
That's fine, but I'm talking about a fantasy perspective. I'll take Godwin.
Well, I would start whichever running back is there over either of those 2 receivers. I'd start Antonio Brown over the running backs in Chicago. And I trust either one of those running backs just because they have so much workload.
That's fair enough. Your guy Michael Pittman or Deebo Samuel, Colts and Niners on Sunday Night Football. That's gross.
That's not gross.
It's gross. It's gross. Jimmy G on Sunday night's never not gross.
Well, I'm home show, but I think Michael Pittman is the year 2 breakout wide receiver. He's gone very under the radar, being a late round fantasy pick and being good enough, but not really having a top, 5 week. I think Michael Pittman shows the hell out in this game and says, I'm the best wide receiver from the year 2 class. I think that's what he tries to do this week. I think he shows that he's a top dog in this league on Sunday Night Football.
I take Deebo. You take Deebo every week. You said it, and that's a wrap on Deebo. Monday night, Marquez Callaway or Tyler Lockett. I've ragged on Lockett the whole year. I don't think it's going to be a Tyler Lockett game, but I'll take Lockett still. I think the floor is safer. I think Callaway needs a bomb or a touchdown to outscore Lockett, but Man, I wouldn't play either of those receivers if you have the opportunity to bench them. Lockett.
I was hoping Michael Thomas would be back for this game, and we can make it Michael Thomas versus Tyler Lockett. I think that would have been a really good one to talk about.
It would have been a great matchup for Michael Thomas too.
Absolutely, and unfortunately, it looks like he's going to be a couple more weeks. So I'm gonna roll the dice and say that Callaway outperforms Lockett. I agree with what Nick said. It's DK. It's not Lockett. You saw it against Pittsburgh. I still have to play Lockett because of bye weeks this week. But if you could have benched Tyler Lockett and you have to do it, I wouldn't blame you for doing it in this matchup.
All right, that was rapid fire. Hopefully we helped with any of your start-sit situations. And if we did not, if you have any other questions, fire them off at our Twitter at PrimeTimeFFPod, or come to our live show, much preferred Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube. Come anytime you want from 11 to 12. We'll answer every single one of your questions. That was our show today. Thank you guys. If you were a first-time listener, again, thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed it and will listen again. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening and or watching. The audio versions are always on our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, anywhere where you can get your podcasts. If you're on iTunes, please give us a 5-star rating and a review. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe and tell your friends, all that other good stuff. Primetime Fantasy Podcast on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, Primetime FF Pod, Facebook, Primetime Fantasy Podcast. Nick, anything else you would like to say before we get out of here to watch our Knicks?
Guys, I know we're usually the DFS show on Sundays, but I think me and Nick got a good plan, so definitely stop by, see what we got planned for you guys. Should be a fun show. We'll still always have that Q&A segment. We want to help you guys out. Make sure you stop by, drop those last second, 1 o'clock question games, any of your Sunday night start 'em, sit 'em questions. We're always there to help. And we get some pretty fun calls, 3 weeks ago, I called OBJ outperforms Tyler Boyd with T. Higgins out. He beat him by 0.1 points. We have a fun time. We want to bring you in there for it. Make sure you drop those questions. You'll get some good answers.
All right. Thank you, guys. See you Sunday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, week 7. Let's get rolling.